Hello everyone, this is Yuko. In this channel, I'll be sharing information in English that I've gathered myself because events happening in China often don't get reported in other countries. I collect information from various media sources, so I would appreciate your comments on the content of the videos. Also, since English is not my native language, I'm using an AI speaker to read in English. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to the channel and showing your support. Now, let's dive into the intriguing world of China. BBC's Chinese edition recently covered the story of Chinese youth suddenly going to work in Africa. Let me provide some background information on this topic. Firstly, there's the case of a 20-year-old named Shenzhen. After graduating from school in June this year, he started working in Ghana. In China, university education usually takes 4 years, but there are vocational schools where you can graduate in 2 to 3 years after high school. Shenzhen graduated from such a vocational school at the age of 20. He didn't originally plan to go to Ghana, but faced difficulties finding a job in China for 6 months after graduation. During this period, he applied to various companies in China, but none of them hired him. In China, the initial job application process often involves submitting resumes online, and it's quite common not to get hired despite numerous applications. In such situations, some Chinese youth choose to continue their studies instead of facing unemployment. For example, university graduates might go to graduate school or study abroad. However, due to financial constraints and a tough economic situation, Shenzhen's family had no choice but to find him a job, and eventually, he ended up working for a Chinese company in Ghana. By the way, Shenzhen had over 50 classmates, but only about 10 of them secured employment before graduation. While the unemployment rate for Chinese youth is said to be around 40%, Shenzhen's case seemed even more challenging. In China, where applying for jobs online is common, getting hired is still not guaranteed, making it difficult for individuals to progress to the next stage of the hiring process. In China, if you get employed, there might be an inquiry about your intention to go to Africa right from the beginning. This is different from Japanese companies where such decisions usually come several years later. For Shenzhen, going to Africa became a last resort, but this is a choice faced by many young Chinese. This issue gained attention in China when a post on social media asked, if you could earn an annual salary of 200,000 Chinese yuan, about 4 million Japanese yen or $20,000, would you consider working in Africa? The post sparked extensive discussions and garnered over 200 million views. An annual salary of 200,000 Chinese yuan is considered excellent for a Chinese fresh graduate. Despite the attractive salary, opinions were divided. Some thought it was a good opportunity, while others expressed concerns about the risks of working in Africa, including security issues and health conditions. There have been cases of Chinese people being attacked in Africa, contributing to an increased awareness of the dangers. Some individuals prefer not to work in Africa, even if the salary is higher than what they could earn in China. On the other hand, there are those who see the experience gained from working in Africa as unique and valuable, offering various opportunities not available when working in China. Perceptions of Africa vary widely, with some regions considered safe and others perceived as risky. Ultimately, the decision to work in Africa depends on an individual's comprehensive understanding of their situation and how much risk they are willing to accept. Despite the potential economic benefits, many young Chinese seem hesitant to go to Africa immediately after graduating from school. Going back to the 20-year-old graduate mentioned earlier, upon arriving in Accra, the capital of Ghana, this individual was surprised by the environment. Many Chinese are already engaged in various businesses in Africa, with at least 3,500 Chinese companies operating there. These include not only state-owned enterprises but also small shops run by Chinese individuals. There are Chinese restaurants offering not only typical Chinese dishes but also regional specialties such as Sichuan cuisine and northeastern Chinese cuisine. Facilities like KTV, bubble tea shops, and hotels with Chinese capital are also present. Additionally, pork, a common ingredient for Chinese people, is readily available, and the living conditions suit them. Living in company-provided dormitories is relatively inexpensive, and meals, including Chinese cuisine served in the company cafeteria, are included. It is estimated that this individual could save around 500,000 Chinese yuan, about 10 million Japanese yen or 50,000 US dollars, during the 3 years of work in Ghana. For this individual, the comfort of life in Africa was crucial, considering the unexpected circumstances that led to the decision to go there. Specifically, despite studying international trade, the job they ended up doing in Africa was as a manager in the sales department of a construction equipment company. This highlights that the major chosen in university doesn't necessarily align with the subsequent job in China. Currently, there is a trend among Chinese youth where the major in university doesn't necessarily align with their job choices. This trend is somewhat similar to the situation in Japan. Acquiring specific skills often leads to professional jobs, and if this trend continues, it may change the way people work. Both Chinese and Japanese universities generally have students of specific ages, and there is often a lack of direct connection between the major and the subsequent job, especially in liberal arts courses. Speaking of liberal arts, for instance, someone who studied history at university might not directly apply that knowledge to work until they become a teacher. As universities increase, this situation becomes somewhat unavoidable. However, there are cases even in liberal arts where specialized knowledge is put to use. For example, among young people going to Africa, there are quite a few who studied French in university. French can be advantageous in regions where it is spoken, considering the historical context of former French colonies. Some plan to build connections with Europeans in Africa and then move to France or other European countries. In another example mentioned in the BBC article, a 23-year-old from Shandong province, who graduated from the economics department of a university, chose to work in Zambia in Africa instead of accepting job offers from Chinese accounting firms and banks. This is considered an unusual choice in China. To expand on that, the individual who chose to work in Zambia is employed by a state-owned Chinese enterprise operating in Zambia. The term state-owned refers to the fact that, in China, such enterprises are considered as stable workplaces almost equivalent to government positions. Therefore, the decision might have been made with the stability associated with a public servant position in mind. However, when it comes to working in Africa, there are various international exchanges and experiences that one cannot have within China. Hence, the choice to work in Africa was made, deliberately seeking such experiences. This individual, while acknowledging that Zambia may be perceived as a bit more uncivilized compared to China, shared an interesting perspective. By the way, some viewers might wonder about the situation with Chinese police. While there may be regional differences due to the vastness of China, in places like Shanghai, for instance, the practice of paying bribes to the police for overlooking traffic violations has been curtailed for quite some time. This is because accepting bribes as a public servant is illegal in China. If a public servant is found accepting bribes, they risk facing severe consequences, such as losing their position. Therefore, while bribery might still occur, especially for smaller amounts, the potential risks make it less common. In this way, the trend of finding employment becoming increasingly difficult for young people within China continues. As a result, cases of young people starting to work in Africa are on the rise. This is not only about seeking employment but also due to the expansion of Chinese businesses throughout Africa. While in the past, Chinese individuals were commonly used as cheap labor in activities such as mining, there is now a shift towards hiring individuals with business skills and the ability to perform intellectual work. As a result, an increase in the influx of Chinese individuals into Africa is expected, and these individuals may play a crucial role in shaping the societies and economies of Africa in the future. Looking ahead, countries like India and Vietnam are often discussed as those experiencing rapid growth after China. However, Africa is also expected to see significant growth in specific regions. China's prominent presence in Africa has raised concerns about the dynamics of global power. For instance, there has been a long-standing competition between China and the United States for control over Africa's internet infrastructure. On the other hand, Japan doesn't seem to be actively engaging in Africa to benefit from its future economic growth. While not an immediate concern, there is a risk of being left behind in the long-term perspective within the global strategic landscape among major countries actively involved in global activities. In conclusion, for Japanese companies and individuals engaging in global activities, strengthening interest and cooperation with various African countries may be crucial. That concludes our discussion for today. Until next time.